Hello and welcome back to another episode of Bumps Breakdown. Today we're going to go over the Miami FC preview, and as always, we're joined by Dylan. But to begin with, we'll go over the last game versus RGV Toros. Not necessarily the best of performances, and one that I would like to forget about very quickly. But Dylan, what are your thoughts on the RGV game?
It was probably our worst performance of the season. I find my emotions are tend to be a little more hot right after the game when we record the locals last call. So I think a couple of times you and I have both found that we've been very negative when we do the post game show, and then we soften a bit. Watching the game back, I did not soften at all. In fact, I became even more convinced that 3-2 as a scoreline seriously flattered us. We did not play well. There's probably a lot of reasons why, but I am glad to have that one behind us, and hopefully that if we can say that's our worst performance of the season, then I think we will have done well the rest of the year.
I think it's tough for us too, because obviously, first and foremost, we're fans of the club. We want them to win. We want them to do well. And I think people may at times think we're maybe being pessimistic too, and maybe being a bit too harsh on the team. But I think we kind of know how good we can be, and know how good we should be, and how well we should be doing in the league too. And I think obviously before the season, we kind of predicted around third, fourth. That's where we're sitting right now after dropping from second place. But also now you've got a big, long away stretch. And then when we get back to home, we've got Sacramento and then San Antonio in the space of kind of not very far away. So kind of tough games on all coming up now. So I am nervous there too. And then obviously two losses in a row at home after kind of going on that good run to begin with too doesn't kind of give me any I wouldn't say any hope, but kind of I'm not looking forward to that Sacramento game right now. But obviously going over the RGV game, kind of what were the main things that stood out to you as far as what didn't look great for us?
First and foremost, RVG pressed us for 90 minutes, and we really at no point seemed like we had an answer for that. We every single time we tried to build up out the back, which as Loyal like to do is pretty much always, it felt like seriously tedious and like in a really, really grating and unenjoyable way. And that's, a little bit down to like some of the issues that we were having, but I think largely RGV were able to game plan against us. For better for worse, Loyal like to play their style home or away, and it's a very defined style. So sometimes when teams figure that out and have an antidote, you have to be able to switch it up, and we really did not have any answers in this game.
Well, the tough thing is too, obviously Nate's been here now for the past, 3-4 years. Obviously he's kind of people think he's been kind of the mastermind, yeah, behind the tactics the past few years. And honestly, over the past few seasons, nothing. Again, I guess we're kind of progressing with the same style, but the formation's kind of stayed as it is. I know last year there was at times we kind of start with the 4-4-2 almost, then it switched to like the 3-5-2. But have you seen anything this season that would suggest that the 3-5-2 that we've been playing has kind of progressed from previous seasons?
Yeah, I mean, there's little tweaks. I think we've wholesale moved away from the state dependent 4-4-2 to 3-5-2 kind of shape. We're really playing more of a true 3-4-3 these days, which I don't, sometimes that's good, sometimes it's not. But yeah, it does seem like we've kind of evolved from year to year, but within this season, we're having a hard time finding the necessary tweaks to make it click.
Yeah, and I think obviously injuries here and there are going to be kind of maybe be the excuses we can give as far as how things are going. I think obviously defense last year was the main thing we spoke about on the pre-season, the season preview before we got the season underway, is that the defense needed to kind of be corrected and adjusted. And to begin the season, we started very well there. But going back on the last few games now, the defensive errors from last season seem to be slowly sneaking back in. And then two is really have teams figured us out. I mean, we've played the same way for a long time now. We kind of spoke about how RGV get basically played in a way that nullified our kind of attack at all, and that's why they won the game. So again, will anything change? Will we change formation? Will we change kind of tactics? I doubt it. But if we don't change tactics, what else is going to take us to the next level? And do you think we are missing a player or two? And I know we spoke about this beforehand, but do you think there is kind of a player that we could bring in, or not any name, but what type of player do you think would improve this current team, or what position?
I think that we've kind of talked about this before, but I just it feels like we're missing somebody who can stitch things together in the final third or find that killer pass. I know in the past that has been Guido sometimes, usually, but he's struggling this year. He didn't have a great game against RGV. In fact, he had a bad giveaway that I think directly led to one of their goals. So and even when he's firing and making those passes well, it's still not the thing he's best at, right? So I think we need someone who can get on the ball and pick a pass in the final third. As far as the general tactics go, we don't need a wholesale change in shape necessarily, but we do maybe need to tweak the instructions and roles that are being given to individual players, because it still feels like we're not getting the best out of quite a few of our guys. And I did want to say too, this game was a great example of how important Nick Moon is to us. Maybe somebody who can bring a little bit of what he does when he's not on the field, even if from a different position, just because he creates that havoc out wide for us, which is important for how we want to play.
Yeah, I think kind of like I guess like a number 10, a true playmaker, and I think obviously Guido has been like that kind of player for us previously, but I think now he's more of a box-to-box player. Will carry the ball forward again defensively. I wouldn't say he's one of our best defensive players, but I would say more of a box-to-box now than a true attacking midfielder. And I think the missing of Charlie Adams too highlights the kind of the need for a playmaker too. Obviously, Charlie's been that guy for us, but he's more so of a deep line playmaker than an actual kind of one who's going to be in the final third, pulling the strings there. So it's tough, and I know Toomey's kind of been in that role a little bit now and again. I think Toomey's more of a winger, honestly, than a true playmaker. So we'll see. The season's long. We've heard nothing about kind of any new signings coming in, and I know guys have come back from injury. So again, we've kind of mentioned about needing a new signing here and there. I think it's going to happen anytime soon. Probably not, but again, we never know with kind of the way things are kind of kept under wraps with the San Diego Loyal. But moving into this weekend's opposition, Miami FC. So far, they're sitting 7th in the Eastern Conference. They've won 2, drawn 5, and lost 2. They've scored 11 and conceded 11, which I guess makes sense with drawing half of the games. Obviously, the game's going to be away for us, but at home for Miami, and at home for them, they've had 2 wins, 3 draws, and a loss. And amongst those 2 wins, they beat Birmingham Legion, who I think currently sitting 3rd in the Eastern Conference, who are, again, they're a pretty good team, Birmingham Legion. And they also beat Las Vegas Lights, who are far from a good team right now, at least I'd say so. Also in the US Open Cup, they did go ahead and get to the 3rd round. They actually lost to Inter Miami, their local rivals, on penalties after drawing 2-2. And another interesting fact here is that their manager, Anthony Pulis, or Pulis, as some people say the last name, is actually Tony Pulis' son, who people may know from Stoke City, and I think he was at West Brom too, but a very typical English old school manager who used Rory Delap's long throw in at Stoke, and a very Brexit style of play there. So that's there. But we'll move into their lineup, and then we'll go into how they play. Then if you want to read us through kind of how they lined up in the last game versus Louisville, where they did actually lose 3-1 away.
Sure, yeah. So starting from the back, their goalkeeper, Maguire. Truthfully, I don't know much about him, but I think he's been their guy this year, so I would expect to see him start. The back line has truthfully mixed up a bit from game to game. We tried to do our best, but I think realistically, we're just going to go with what they went against Louisville, because that seemed to be the best guess we could come up with. So from left to right, that's Stanley, Craig, and Chapman Page. So I don't know. Any thoughts on any of those defenders, goalkeeper? Have you even heard of any of these guys?
For me, I've heard of Paco Craig before. I know he's at Louisville beforehand. He's been around the USL for a long time. Interesting fact, he was actually at West Ham's academy before he came out to the US. And I actually heard about Paco Craig because I think I may have bought him on a Football Manager. It might have been Football Manager 2007 for one of my extra City saves back then. But Packer Craig's been around the USL for a while. Decent English centre back. I think he might be their captain too. But he'll be kind of their mainstay in the back for them as well. They're moving into the midfield here on the right wing back. Segbers into midfield. It's two centre midfielders here, Akinyode and Valo, and then on the right they have left wing back Intelfa, who is also a Trinidad and Tobago international. But I think he'll be a key one for them, and from what I've seen, he's kind of very good going forward and getting back in defence as well. So not just a defensive wing back there, and kind of the front three. Who do you think? Or who did they go with in the last game, Dylan?
I think we'll probably see Salazar on the right, Murphy down the middle, and Sorto on the left. I don't know too much about any of these guys. Again, Miami's probably one of the teams in the league I've spent the least amount of time watching in the few years I've been a USL supporter. But I feel like whenever I am watching the Miami FC, and their goal scoring comes up, I feel like Kyle Murphy is mentioned. His goal scoring record doesn't necessarily reflect that. I think he's got like 13 goals in like 45 games or something like that for them. But he's somebody I feel like his name pops up. So, I keep an eye out, I guess.
Yeah, and I know we watched back the Birmingham Legion highlights too, and Sorso did score an absolute worldie of a free kick
True.
in that game as well. So we'll have to be a little bit careful giving away any free kicks edge of the box against them as well. But we'll kind of go into how they play. Primarily, it'll be kind of a 3-4-3 when they are in possession of the ball, and then they'll kind of drop back into a 5-4-1 in defence. Again, those two wingers in Salazar and Sorto will kind of drop back in with Akinyode and Valo to kind of create that midfield four there. And then obviously the wingers will tuck in, and defenders will kind of drop back in. Segbers and Telfer obviously would be pushing on quite a lot, and they do not to overlap as well. But again, obviously out possession of kind of a bank of 5 and a bank of 4. So hopefully if we get an early goal, they'll have to press and kind of get out of that shape. But my only concern is if we concede early on, they're going to be more than happy to sit in those two banks there. But obviously looking at the team, kind of any areas do you think that we are going to kind of come out on top in, looking at it?
Yeah, so I think in watching the highlights from the Louisville game last weekend and through reading some of the USL Tactics stuff, it seems like something that Louisville were trying to do, and successfully to the extent that they won that game 3-1, was move the Miami defense side to side. And that ended up creating overloads for them, which led to, I think, 2 of their 3 goals. And so whether intentionally or not, Loyal do a lot of moving the ball side to side. So I do wonder if maybe we can work that to our advantage, or maybe that was just something Louisville was able to take advantage of. But I do think, if we can dominate those wide spaces like we're always looking to do, that will hopefully be something we could take advantage of.
Yeah, I was hoping you were going to mention that as far as us playing side to side. The only thing I think with Louisville compared to us, obviously Louisville start with a back 4. So when Miami wanted to press all 4 of their defenders, they needed to bring in whether it be another of those wing backs or one of those centre midfielders to come into that space. Then it allowed a bit more space in the middle for that Louisville to get the ball. The only issue is when we're playing against a team with a front 3, is they can essentially go man for man with our back 3. And that's where I do get a little bit worried when teams do go man for man with us, that we don't always come out on top. Again, similar to the Detroit City game, first game of the season, when they made it very difficult for us, even though the Detroit aren't having the best of years too. So I am a little bit worried there against teams kind of playing a 3-4-3, kind of a 5-2-3, whatever. But we'll see. And then moving into our formation here and kind of how we're going to line up. I know it's been tough this year. How do you think we're going to line up as far as keeper and the back 3? Because I know the back 3 has kind of been very interchangeable so far.
So as we said last week, we're going to stick with Koke until we're given a reason to not be picking him. For the back 3, we've gone Kyle Adams, Stoneman, and Elijah. I would personally like to see Simba get in there. I thought he had a great cameo, actually, in the game against RGV. I think he maybe had like the hockey assist on the penalty or something. But he was proactive whenever he got on the ball, won his duels. I wouldn't mind seeing him get some minutes. That said, it does seem that Elijah's preferred, even at that wide center back spot. So we've gone Elijah for that third back line spot.
Yeah, it's a tough one then. I know we've kind of touched on Simba a lot this season, and I think we kind of speak very highly of him. I'm a little bit disappointed he's not seen more game time. To be completely honest, I don't think he's put too many things wrong, or put his foot wrong, too many opportunities that he has had. But obviously, I know that Elijah Stoneman and Carla, obviously the more trusted guys, and the guys with more experience. But again, maybe we see a back four at some point in the season. I don't believe we're going to see that anytime soon. But I will be interested to see how we do kind of line up with the back four there as well. And then moving into the fullbacks now that Bodley is back. More like we'll go with Moon and Bodley, I think. I think Perez has done well there at times. My only issue with Perez is the defensive ability isn't there for him, and I think he can admit that too, because he's not a fullback. He's not. I mean, again, going forward attacking as a wing back, he does very well. But primarily, he's an attacking midfielder or a winger. And I know he did get moved there at the end of the game versus RGV, and I think there has also been another game where he's moved into that role too. So again, he's off the bench to come on and attack, so we'll see there. And then into the midfield three that we're going with, or the two and the other Guido role. But obviously going with Guido there, who do you think will go with the other two?
So yeah, like you said, Guido in the Guido role. The other two, I think, assuming Charlie's still out because we haven't really gotten any info on his health. I'm going to go Colin and Corona. I know Cam was playing in the back line last game, but I thought Cam probably, unfortunately, had his worst game of the season against RGV. And Corona was, one of the few guys on the field who I think you could argue actually did have a decent game. So yeah, Corona and Martin, I would say.
Yeah, and then the final two here, I think the attack's been another difficult one to figure out. I know we've kind of said beforehand that we think Conway and Damas will kind of be the main two when they are fit and healthy. And I think obviously right now with Conway being back in, those will be the main two. And I know Toomey was taken off at halftime, as well as Elijah and Camden in the last game there as well. So we're thinking Conway, Damas, but then that leaves obviously we've got Toomey on the bench, Collier on the bench, Perez on the bench. So for once we have a decent array of attacking threat coming off the bench there too, and then obviously Camden coming into the midfield there as well. So defense and the midfield attackers now kind of, I think depth is looking better with the guys coming back from injury, but I still think we're missing a player or two to come in. But again, we don't know what's going to happen there. And then moving into kind of the key questions and matchups I've got here. Kind of a few things we touched on a little bit beforehand as well. Really, do we see anything differently from Nate tactically? I think the answer to that one probably is no. I don't think Nate can really tweak too much. But I am curious to see when something does happen, because I don't think we're going to play a 3-5-2 the whole season. But I could also see us playing 3-5-2 the whole season as well. Dylan, what are the odds, do you reckon? Or how many games do you reckon we won't play a 3-5-2? Or do you think we're going to play that the whole season?
I think the starting lineup the whole season will be a 3-4-3, 3-5-2, somewhere in that kind of wheelhouse, yeah.
Okay. And then here, can we bounce back after 3 losses in the last 4 games? I've included the Seattle game in there. But again, looking back at that, yeah, 3 losses the last 4 games isn't, again, a great thing to look at, but obviously we need to bounce back at some point. And then do we see the attack finally clicking? I think that's kind of been the question that I've been able to copy and paste from every single Bombs Breakdown episode so far this season. But again, I know when our defense isn't looking great, the attack has to be clicking and getting goals, and when those both aren't working, it isn't a great partnership there. And really, who will be our playmaker? I know we've kind of spoken about that already, with Guido coming from that role last year. But again, no one really stepping in and being that one playmaker in the attacking third. I know Charlie's been that one in kind of our maybe midfield area, but not in that attacking third. And then for Miami here, do Miami sit in or do they press high? I think that one really comes down to who gets the first goal in the game. And then can Miami exploit our spaces behind our fullbacks, which, again, I think has been our issue. And a lot of our goals conceded have kind of come from our fullbacks pushing on, getting forward in attack. And then the back three is kind of all over the place. But Dylan, kind of going through those questions there, the matchups, any of them stand out to you or that you kind of want to focus on?
Yeah, two things I wanted to touch on, and kind of related. As far as Miami sitting back versus pressing high, they will press, but it's not like a high full field press. It's more of like a mid block press that will come into their attacking half a little bit. But I don't expect to see them pushing their whole team into our half. Um, so I think they'll do more defending in that low block. They're pretty good at defending once they're in that 5-4-1 shape. So the question will be, can we pick apart a set defense while also maintaining our own defensive structure? And that leads me to my second point: who will be our playmaker? Whoever it's going to be, presumably Guido, as we've predicted, is probably going to have a lot of license to run around between the lines in the final third because like I said, we're going to have a lot of the ball. We're going to be looking to pick the lock on a largely set defensive system. So whether that's Guido, Toomey, Conway dropping deep, I don't know. Whoever it is playing in those half spaces in between the lines is going to need to have their head on a swivel and make some quick passes.
Especially with the fact that Miami do play with only a midfield two. If we do go with a three in there, it's always going to be a man free. And then whether Guido kind of pushes up a bit more and kind of creates like a 2-1-2 with kind of the two centre midfielders, the attacking midfielder, then the two strikers as well. So maybe kind of I wouldn't say a false nine, more of like a number 10 attacking midfielder in there. But I think Guido so far, when he has played in midfield, it's been more of another player in that three to kind of more of like I guess a number 6, a number 8, and a kind of a lower 10 in there too. And then my favourite part of the show, predictions. Last week, I went very bold, 5-2. We lost 3-2. So I've kind of eaten my words a bit there. Dylan, you went, what, last week was
4-1, I said.
4-1. So it seems like we're getting further away. I would say we're getting closer and closer, but we're getting further away now. This week, what are your predictions? How do you think the game's going to go?
I unfortunately am not feeling super optimistic about this one. We're traveling across the country to Miami, playing on an artificial turf surface that isn't the best. It's not terrible. It's not Oakland Laney College level, but it's not great. They don't have a huge fan base, so it's not that I expect there to be like a raucous home crowd, but on the flip side, sometimes that like cavernous feel can almost like work against you. Anyway, that is all to say, I'm not hugely confident in Loyal on the road this year thus far, especially when we have to travel a long way. I'm expecting kind of a boring game. I'm expecting there to be a good stretch to the game where Loyal are sitting in, conserving energy, and we as fans are going to be like, what are they doing? And the answer is going to be, well, they traveled 3,000 miles to 90 degrees and 90% humidity in Miami. So I don't expect this to be like a high flying, exciting game, both in terms of the conditions and just Miami FC are not like a high flying team, really, in any sense of that phrase. So I'm going to go 1-1, a draw. Yeah, like I said, not too optimistic. I'm going to go Conway for us and Murphy for them. I would love to be wrong, but that's what my gut's telling me this week.
I'm leaning more towards a draw like yourself here. I mean, I want to be optimistic. I want to say we're going to get the win, but also know how we've been away from home. And I mean, I guess I am worried about how we currently are. And I might, before we even got started, I was going to say 2-2. That would have been my prediction. You then also mentioned that, I mean, I've just got my phone up here right now. I mean, on Saturday, the weather's going to be 88. Obviously very humid in Miami, lows of 74. So even the game's going to be a little bit early. It's going to be hot. And apparently thunderstorms on Sunday. So maybe they might come a day early. We'll see. I'm going to go... I want to be optimistic. I do. I really do. I'm gonna go 2-1. We're gonna go 2-1. We're gonna go 2-2. I want to be optimistic here. I don't want to be negative, but it's tough not to be at times, I think. We'll go with a Conway goal, and we'll go Bodley as well, Bo Dilly. And then for Miami, I think Soto. I'll go Soto. Free kick possibly. Hopefully not, but we'll see. But yeah, 2-1. If I got a second guess in there, I'm going to go 2-2. That'll be my... If it gets 2-2, I'll give myself half a point for that. But yeah, it's going to be a tough game again. We never play well on turf. I think that's another thing too. We don't play well in really hot weather. We never play well on turf. We never play well away. And those three factors are in play this weekend. So not the kind of things you want. But Dylan, any last things before we wrap things up here?
Yeah, I just USL away games are hard. Like really, really good teams, generally speaking, in a season will win like 5, maybe 6 away games. San Antonio was a little bit of an exception to that last year. They were actually probably better on the road than they were at home. But anyway, that is to say that like Loyal are not the only club that struggle on the road, though maybe our struggles are a little more acute. But I digress. That is all said. This is a game that on paper we can and probably should win. And I would really, really love if just for once this season we like meet our expectations. Again, as you just said, there's all these factors that historically go against us. But I feel like we're due for a breakout. And this is again a game on paper I think we should be winning. So I would like to see us maybe just play a little more unrestricted. I feel like we're just thinking too hard sometimes. Watching the highlights back last night, there was one specific instance that I remember, but in like the 50 somethings minute, but it happened a bunch of times where somebody would break the lines and be dribbling through, and Domus often, or somebody else would be making a great run and they would just not be found. And I just think we're like overthinking things a little bit, Anyway, so I've gone off on a soliloquy here, but this is a game we can win. And I would like to see us just like have a little confidence in ourselves and not try and overcomplicate things,
I think the main thing is take the shackles off a little bit, play with a bit more freedom, don't play so strict, and we'll kind of see how we do play. And one last thing I did want to chuck in here, Miami have had some interesting managers in the past too. Obviously, I mentioned that Anthony Pulis is the current manager, son of Tony Pulis, former Premier League manager. Their last manager before him was a man named Paul Dalglish, whose dad is Kenny Dalglish, former Liverpool and Scotland legend. And then before that, they also had Alessandro Nesta, Italy and AC Milan legend too. So again, some interesting managers for Miami FC. But that'll be things there. We have a watch party this weekend for the Miami game. Dylan, can you remember where the watch party is this weekend?
Yeah, I think the club has organized something at Alesmith up in Miramar, who I think is a new in-stadium beer partner. I don't know. I just had a 394 this past weekend. And I think, don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure the locals are hopping on the bandwagon of that effort to put together that viewing party. So I think pretty much everybody will be up there at Alesmith Miramar.
Yeah, so Alesmith this weekend, and I think they are the new in-stadium beer. Because I know I got a nice little Mexican lager from them this weekend. And then we'll be doing another Bums Breakdown the following week. And the next game after Miami, if I'm correct in saying, is going to be, let me find it here. After Miami, we are playing against Oakland Roots away on another turf field. It is not going to be the normal turf field. I know Oakland are playing in a temporary college stadium for now. But again, another tough game there. And after that, San Antonio away, Sacramento at home, San Antonio at home. So not an easy run of games, to say the least. But again, thanks for listening or watching, and we will see you guys very soon.